I do not anticipate Elon Musk playing. He said, well, I'm going to stay involved and stuff. I do not anticipate that. I would assume that he may do a fundraiser with Donald Trump. He may occasionally appear with him, but I think his time as sort of major Washington player in the Trump administration is over.
Hi, I'm Maddie, Hale, and welcome to the Trump Report. Today we've had Chris Cillizza on the show. He's a journalist. He was former CNN and Washington Post. We speak to him about this showdown between Donald Trump and Harvard University, what this all means for foreign students. We also spoke to him about Donald Trump and Elon Musk, whether Trump's had enough of him, whether it's enough time in Washington for Elon Musk. We also spoke to him about the situation going on between Donald Trump and his personal business dealings with the Trump Organization and the Middle East, and whether if it's a conflict of interest. So all that today on the Trump Report. You can watch us every day, Monday through Friday, on Times Radio's YouTube. Chris Cillizza, independent journalist, former CNN and Washington Post, and now hosting his own daily news show. Thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Thrilled to be here.
So much for you and I to get through on this Friday, but the big story of today is, of course, this showdown between Donald Trump and Harvard University. Donald Trump has announced that he's ending Harvard's ability to enroll international students, and this is a result of the fact that Donald Trump believes that kind of exacerbating anti-Semitism. They're allowing students to protest against Jewish students, but this will affect a number of students at Harvard. So what was your reaction to this news today?
Well, yeah, Maddie, 25% potentially of the Harvard undergrad and graduate students are affected by this. I will be totally frank with you. I was unaware that the President of the United States could ban international students from attending any university. This is, you rightly read it, right? This is Donald Trump. He is very vindictive. He likes to get his way. He has made clear to Harvard over the last, 6 weeks to 2 months that he doesn't like their policies. He doesn't like their admissions standards. He thinks they're too woke. He thinks they are, as you mentioned, sort of allowing anti-Semitic voices to rise, and he has threatened to take away more than $2 billion in federal funding from them, and they have responded by saying, like, okay, we don't think you can do that. We're going to get into litigation with you, and we're not going to just bend to your will. This is him amping up the stakes, right? This is him saying, okay, well, you didn't do what I want, so I'm now going to do something else to you. I don't think you can read it any other way than sort of retribution for him not getting what he wants.
And I wondered why he even started with Harvard, because the main university at the front of all of these protesting, these pro-Palestinian protests or anti-Israel, whatever you want to label them, is Columbia University. That's kind of been the more vocal one. There was a lot of damage made at their library a few weeks ago. And Trump's statement on this was, or the Homeland Security Secretary, I should say, was, let this serve as a warning to all universities and academic institutions across the country. So I'm kind of thinking that they're using Harvard as a guinea pig to any other university that wants to exercise this protesting in the it's mostly Palestine versus Hamas war. So I wonder if this is something he'll probably implement on other universities if he doesn't get his way.
Yeah, I think this is a test case. Look, in the United States, Harvard is widely seen as kind of the best college in the country, right? It's everybody knows what it is. It's ubiquitous. So I think Trump's view on all this stuff is you kind of go after the big guy, and you say, let this be a lesson to the rest of you, effectively. And I think that's what he's doing. I mean, I will note, he has threatened reduction of federal funding to Columbia as well. So it's not as though he's ignored Columbia, but right now, certainly Harvard is where he's focusing his time. And again, I think that's a combination of, it's the most high-profile university in the United States, and it has been openly resistant to what he has asked them to do, at least so far.
Chris, we're going to get into the Middle Eastern deals in a minute with Trump and his government. But what I find quite interesting is you see Donald Trump getting up in this sanctimonious way saying that the universities need to stop protesting against Israel. It's anti-Israel. But then you see Donald Trump in Qatar making these deals with the Qatari government, meeting with the Qatari royal family, wanting to buy a plane, wanting to be gifted a plane, I should say.
I was gonna say, not buy one.
Not buy. Which, if you were an American Israeli Jew or you're an Israeli in general, if you're Benjamin Netanyahu, you're looking at this situation thinking, why are you in bed with Qatar, who's not only funding Hamas, but housing Hamas terrorists?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people do this, but I think it is situational ethics, right? It's Donald Trump likes those Gulf states because he likes rich people, and they are obviously sort of the prototypical rich people in the world. He likes powerful people. He likes nice things, and they are nice to him. I mean, I do always say this, Maddie, and, it's like, I don't want to oversimplify it, but dealing with Donald Trump is like dealing with a child. I don't mean this in a pejorative way. I just think he is utterly transactional. If you are nice to him and give him things, he is favorably inclined to you. Look at the difference here, right? Qatar is giving him a $400 million plane that the U.S. just formally accepted. Harvard is not giving him what he wants. They are not bending toward his demands in terms of their admissions policies, in terms of how they do treat some of these protests on campus, and therefore he's going to penalize you. I guarantee you, if Harvard said, okay, you know what, we're going to adjust our admissions policies. We are too woke. Donald Trump is right. The attacks on Harvard would stop, and he would say Harvard is smart and they've done the right thing. It's purely, are you doing what he wants? Are you giving him what he wants? It is not. You are looking for a level of intellectual consistency, I think rightly, that simply does not exist.
Well, I mean, we saw that with the Zelensky Oval Office showdown, Chris, because it did say, Zelensky didn't give Trump what he wanted, so he spat the dummy. But we weirdly haven't seen that with Putin yet, because Putin's not giving Trump what he wants. He's not negotiating a deal. He's saying no to everything, and he's not showing up to meetings. And yet Trump doesn't seem to spit the dummy with him. So I don't know, the rules for thee. It could be the situation, but I want to move on to this Elon Musk. We know that Elon Musk has obviously been quite we've been calling him the co-president since Trump's inauguration, but there was speculation that he was kind of going to finish his role at the end of May, the start of June, because he's a short-term contract within the White House. So he's not really meant to stay on, but he was speaking at the Qatar Economic Forum on Tuesday, and he said that he will be taking a step back from political spending. He said, I will do a lot less spending politically in the future. I think I've done enough. And he donated around $290 million to the Trump campaign, the Republican Party, in the 2024 election. But a lot of his polling in terms of what he's been doing with Doge and this spending cuts have not been favourable towards him. So an anonymous GOP operative told Politico this week that he's finished, he's done, he's gone, he polls terrible, people hate him. He comes to Wisconsin thinking he can buy votes, wears a cheese hat, acts like a 9-year-old. It doesn't work. It's offensive. I wonder, Chris, do you think this is the impression from Donald Trump that he wants Elon Musk out? Or do you think it's because we haven't really seen Elon Musk really in the spotlight with Trump in the last few weeks? I wonder if this actually is him being slow walked out.
I think it's a little of both. I mean, I've always compared Elon Musk and Donald Trump's like bromance, or however you want to describe it, as sort of two piranhas in a bowl. If you put two piranhas in a bowl, they might not try to eat each other immediately, but they will eventually try to eat one another because it is their, I was going to say human nature, but their fish nature, right? This is sort of like, this is Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They are both people who want to be deferred to, who are always the most powerful person in the room, whose voice is always the one that is listened to, who always get the final decision. Well, you can't have two of those people, right? I mean, it just doesn't work. So I always thought that there was sort of an expiration date on Elon Musk's role. I've often compared it to when you have little kids and you go out to eat. You know that at a restaurant, you know that like you have probably an expiration date on that dinner. Like, it might be 10 minutes before your kids are demanding that you walk around and, you can't eat your food, or it might be an hour, but it's definitely coming. You are not going to quietly eat your dinner and sip your coffee afterward, and then everyone will get up and be like, oh, what a lovely dinner. Like, little kids don't do that. That's kind of Donald Trump. and like, there was always an end date to this. And I do think it's a little bit of, I think Trump was starting to kind of get sick of Elon, right? In that Elon was no longer as helpful to Donald Trump, right? He was getting him bad press. He's unpopular. Donald Trump does not like the whole co-president thing. You know what I mean? That narrative is not something he likes. And then for Elon, look, the guy is someone who flits from thing to thing. He's got a drilling company. He's got a space company. He owns Twitter, or X. He owns Tesla. He does a lot of different things. He's never a guy who was going to spend the entire 4 years of the Trump administration rooting out, alleged waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. And so I think when you saw Tesla stock go down, when you saw his popularity drop, it all kind of made sense that this was always going to end pretty poorly. It was just a question of when. So I think it's probably, when people break up, they're like, it's mutual, and it's never really totally mutual. It's usually someone is a little bit more the aggressor. I don't know that this was mutual 50-50, but I do think for both of them, Elon's presence started to make less and less sense. And so, I do not anticipate Elon Musk playing it. He said, well, I'm going to stay involved and stuff. I do not anticipate that. I would assume that he may do a fundraiser with Donald Trump. He may occasionally appear with him, but I think his time as sort of, major Washington player in the Trump administration is over.
I mean, as you mentioned, he has so many business ventures, Chris. He's probably just way too busy for it, but it did seem, I don't want to say it was a battle of the egos, because I don't really necessarily believe that Elon Musk is like as egotistical as Donald Trump. I just think that...
Well, that'd be hard.
Yeah, I think that Elon Musk kind of craved his approval and his friendship a lot, and I think that perhaps Elon Musk set Donald Trump up in a way to help him win the election, not just monetarily, but he did so many campaign rallies and really got a lot of the headlines on him. So it was more just like he set him up to win, or he at least contributed to the win. He set up these Doge carts. He got some good headlines around him, and then now it's time for him to go.
Well, and I will say, Maddie, to your point, I mean, one thing we see in American politics all the time is mostly rich men, but sometimes very rich women too, running for office or making huge donations. And I think that is because political power is a thing that just being rich doesn't give you, right? Being on the inside, being at the table when big decisions are made, there's real appeal, I think, for someone who's very wealthy, who doesn't have to worry about money anymore. I think there's real appeal of sort of being in the political space and being powerful there. So I actually do understand sort of why Elon was interested. I mean, look, to be able to go to the president and say, hey, we should do this, or we should do that, or we should get rid of this. I mean, that's real power, right? And you don't get that just by being wealthy. So I understand the attraction. I understand the attraction from Trump's side of things as well. Elon is, the richest man in the world. He is incredibly innovative, whatever you think of him. Donald Trump likes being around smart, rich people. I just think probably, again, if you thought that Elon Musk was going to be sort of waving to Donald Trump as he gets in Marine One at the end of on January 20th, 2029, that was never going to be him.
No. I want to get into this situation between what's happening when it comes to this overall conversation about Joe Biden's health. We've obviously seen it announced from his team that he's suffering from cancer. There's been a lot of speculation about when it actually occurred. We won't get into the hypothetical of that, but promoting his new book, we had Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson promoting their new book, Original Sin, and it's all about the cover-up of Joe Biden's health and his disastrous decision to run again in the 2024 election. But they both appeared on Megyn Kelly's show, and some would say, ripped them to shreds because she was basically asking why Jake Tapper, when he had the ear of the ear of Joe Biden, in terms of having him on his show a few times, why he didn't hold him to accountability in terms of his physical and mental health. And that came to a bit of a head. So what was your reaction when you saw that clip, Chris?
I hate the coverage, where it's like Megyn Kelly eviscerates Jake Tapper. Megyn Kelly grills Jake Tapper. I wrote about this in my newsletter. I actually thought Jake's answer, if you go and read it, and I do know him. I mean, I worked at CNN. I do know him. We're not like best buddies, but we are friendly. Just by way of noting that. I actually thought his answer was pretty good. I mean, I have talked about this myself as an American political journalist. I do think you have to acknowledge, and Jake did acknowledge in that back and forth with Megyn Kelly, that look, yeah, we could have done better. We broadly, as the media in America, should have probably not taken Joe Biden and his inner circle's word for his health and well-being. We should have trusted our eyes and ears more, where it was clear he was aging. I mean, I think it's harder to know when you see him walk to Marine One. I think it's harder to be like, oh, he's mentally declining. Like, I'm not a doctor. I know lots of Republicans like to shout like dementia, Parkinson's. It's like, I'm not going to say that the President of the United States has dementia or Parkinson's, like, with no diagnosis as a non-doctor. Like, I think that's deeply irresponsible. But could we have asked more questions about why he was shielded? And we knew this at the time, why he was shielded from the public, why he was shielded from the media. Yes, we could have, and I actually think Jake acknowledges that. My thing is, in that back and forth with Megyn Kelly, the thing that I struggle with, Maddie, is I think that we can and should do that as journalists. Say, look, we could have done a better job. Here's what we screwed up. Here's what we're trying to learn. I think the problem is our system is now set up to conclude, aha, you were part of the cover-up. It's like, no, I wasn't. And I don't think Jake was part of any cover-up. Like, I wasn't not asking harder questions of Joe Biden or following up questions of Joe Biden because I wanted Joe Biden to win the election. Like, there wasn't anything like that. I struggled with how aggressive the Biden people were in their pushback against any questions about his health. I think it is very easy for someone to say to Jake Tapper or any member of the American media, how could you not have seen this? I could see it with my eyes and ears. And it's like, well, yeah, I saw with my eyes and ears too that Joe Biden was old and didn't move particularly well. And the American public thought, a majority of the public thought he was too old. But I think that's different than saying, like, he's incompetent to run again. So I just think people like to paint it as a black and white issue. I think there's more gray area there, not to absolve the media in America for blame. We could have done better, but it was not some broad cover-up to elect Joe Biden.
I do agree with you, and in the sense when I saw that Jake and Alex were writing this book and they were promoting it, part of me was a little bit hang on, because I don't have the same access as you guys to the American political, people coming on my show, because I was covering Joe Biden's presidency in Sydney, with weird hours, and you still just don't have the same access. Yep. But I was looking at it thinking, well, the reality is a lot of, and I'm going to say left-leaning journalists, because I don't know, Jake or anyone wouldn't even say, where they lean, as they shouldn't. They're journalists. But I remember at the time thinking, no one's covering this to the extent that they should. And that was just because I felt like I was covering it so much as a random journalist in Sydney. But then I look at this book, Chris, and I think, well, it doesn't really matter, because at least he's writing about it now, and at least he's putting pen to paper and interviewing various people across the board who feel like this cover-up should still be spoken about, because it should, because it's only been a couple of months since Donald Trump's even been in power. And first of all, it should be a lesson to the Democratic Party that you can't pull one over the American people, and you can't pull one over everyone, because it will come to light, and we saw that in the June presidential debate. But you were working as a journalist during Biden's first 2 years in his term. So were you finding that you were stonewalled? Were you finding that you guys were kind of blocked from proper reporting on him?
Yeah, a little bit. I think, and if you do read the book, I do think there's considerable evidence that there was a concerted and coordinated effort from the people closest to Joe Biden to run a aggressive pushback campaign, both when reporters would reach out to them, when questions would be asked in public, but also on social media and, using social media influencers to say, he's totally fine. How could you say that? So yeah, I mean, that's not, though, Maddie, I mean, that's not an excuse. Like, and I don't think Jake or Alex, both of whom I know, I don't think they would cite it as an excuse. Like, we should have done better. I just don't think admitting we should have done better is also admitting that we were purposely not doing better to hurt Donald Trump and help Joe Biden. But, I just want to say one other thing about the book. I think a lot of people say, why didn't you report this then? Why report it now and make money off of it? To Jake and Alex. The one thing I will say, and I think you know this as a journalist, but I think a lot of non-journalists don't know this. A lot of the people willing to talk to them after the fact were not willing to talk in the moment, right? So it's the assumption that, well, they could have written this book in May 2024. I'm not sure that they could have, right? I think seeing what happened, seeing Kamala Harris lose, I think that, more people are more willing to talk after something like that happens than they are in the moment. So yes, they are absolutely making money off of this book. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It is a for-profit enterprise. But I also think people who think like, oh, they held back all this stuff they knew, I'm not convinced that that's the case.
Yeah, and a lot of the book does talk about how, journalists would reach out to the White House and they were responded quite aggressively and threatened. But just
and that is 100% true.
Yeah, and it's not surprising just because we've saw so much hiding in plain sight, Chris. But just a final question, because I can't keep you too long, but I want to get into this situation with Donald Trump going to the Middle East. Now, we saw him come home with quite a number of investments into the US from Dubai, from Qatar, from the UAE, but there was a lot of there was a spotlight on Donald Trump's personal business dealings with the Trump organization, run by both his sons, and what that would mean and whether there was a conflict of interest involved, because he's building I think 2 resorts, he's building a tower, he's building a golf course over there at the time. But I want to talk to you about this Wall Street Journal report and get your thoughts on it, because it seems the situation goes a little bit deeper and involves Steve Witkoff and his son. They have a cryptocurrency business. The article states that before Trump was inaugurated, a few weeks before, Steve Witkoff went over to the UAE to speak with an Abu Dhabi royal about regional issues, but he was also there to attend a cryptocurrency conference. The article states less than 5 months later, Witkoff's son, Zach, co-founder of the cryptocurrency venture World Liberty Financial, took the stage at a conference in Dubai to announce the company had struck a deal for the Sheikh's company to buy $2 billion worth of their new cryptocurrency. The expected tens of millions of dollars in annual profits would be split between the Witkoffs and their co-founders and the Trump family, who have a 60% stake in the company. Now, this is interesting that these two families, Trump's Middle Eastern envoy and him, have a business deal together. They're doing business in the Middle East. This, coupled with the fact that a new YouGov poll, Chris, has found that 52% of Americans believe that Trump is using his office for personal gain. So I want your response to that.
I'm stunned it's only 52%. I mean, he's clearly using his office for personal gain. Maddie, you didn't mention this, but I will just throw in the broader crypto conversation. The World Liberty Financial setup, it's basically they started a crypto bank. And they've gotten all these investments that will benefit the family. I think that's one piece. The other piece, and this happened in Washington on Thursday night, Donald Trump started a meme coin. And I think people get confused about when we talk about crypto, but people get confused. Look, all that this one is It's literally a coin with Donald Trump's face on it that trades on exchange markets. And he hosted the 220 biggest owners of this meme coin, okay, at his golf course on Thursday night near Washington. This was a dinner with the president. It was designed specifically to get the price of the meme coin higher because it had been lagging a little bit, and people thought, okay, well, if we sell access to the president, then more people will buy it. $394 million was spent just by those 220 people to attend this event. Now, again, this money, it doesn't go to the U.S. government. It doesn't even go to the Trump campaign. It goes to this, company that the Trump family, I guess it's the Trump organization, but the Trump organization is basically the Trump family. You know who owns 80% of those Trump collectible coins? The Trump organization. So if they are more valuable, driven up by people wanting to have access to the president, then when you hold 80% of those coins, you are going to be able to sell them for more money. I mean, this is just grift in plain sight. Like, it's not even, I remember early in my career, there was a huge deal about Bill Clinton selling to donors that you could sleep in the Lincoln bedroom at the White House. You could have an overnight there, and people were up in arms. Oh, he's using the official White House to raise money for the campaign. Well, this is just straight up pay for access to the president of the United States, and by paying, you are giving the president and his family money. Not even the U.S. government, not even a campaign, the president and his family. I mean, it's stunning stuff. I mean, we focus on the Qatari plane, and understandably, it's a $400 million gift from a royal family to the president of the United States. But the stuff he is doing with crypto, whether it's World Liberty Financial or this meme coin, I think is just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, especially after all the uproar there was about Hunter Biden. But Chris, I've got to leave you there. Thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Oh my gosh, a pleasure. Thank you for having me.